Welcome to my World History Notes, where I'm sharing with you some things I'm learning about the Cold War. Some things I knew. I mean, a general outline. I knew what happened, like most people who study history or like history do. But I'm also learning individual things each day that are fascinating. I just want to share them with you. Not to be it's not a slick professional website. I don't have great graphics or, I'm not a polished speaker, but just sharing with you things I'm learning and by doing this, it's a lot of fun for me. By doing this, it encourages me to dig deeper. And that's what I'm trying to do to understand more. As long as I'm on this earth, I'm always wanting to learn. So I hope that you'll follow along with me and do some digging on your own. You don't have to agree with my conclusions. I don't expect you to, but because I have my own unique set of values and worldview. But I do hope that some of these things will interest you if you're watching this. I'm assuming you've watched some of my other videos and you have some interest in this. So I want to begin, and we're still in. I'm still in 1945, but I want to talk about. I always talk about a communist or a person, a particular person of interest from that era and ours, because all of these things impact us today. Okay, so the person I want to talk about today is somebody who had a significant influence in our country in the 60s and beyond, and was part of a movement, a big part of a movement. Her name was Betty Friedan. She wrote The Feminine Mystique, a very important feminist book. I think you can get on Amazon. And and what I want to point out is that Betty Friedan was not just a feminist. She was a Stalinist, at least a Soviet sympathizer, a communist sympathizer. Um, and she may well have been an agent, but she certainly her background is definitely something. It's noteworthy. It's something you want to just take a look at. So let's talk about Betty Friedan a couple of minutes. Um, now, I recently, not too long ago, a Smith College professor, Daniel Horowitz, wrote a book, Betty Friedan, The Making of the Feminine Mystique. Feminine Mystique was her book. Now, she always presented herself as a typical suburban housewife until she began working on her book, which was the big important book for the launched the modern women's movement. One of the books, but one of the most important books. But in her college days and until her mid 30s, she was clearly a Stalinist Marxist. She knew had a lot of friends in the Communist Party and the communist influencers. She even was the girlfriend, a lover of a young communist physicist working on the atom bomb projects in Berkeley's radiation lab with J. Robert Oppenheimer. She said that her the suburban family household, quote, was a comfortable concentration camp. But that had more to do with her Marxist hatred for America than with any actual experience she had as a housewife and a mother. Her husband, Carl, was also a leftist. He once complained that his wife was, quote, was in the world during the whole marriage and had a full-time maid and, quote, seldom was a wife and mother. So she lied about her real life views and experiences, and all through her life. And so, uh, even though this Horowitz guy is a sympathetic leftist, he's not a right winger. So, but she wouldn't even cooperate with him. Uh, he was trying to tell the truth about her life, which and her maiden name was Betty Goldstein. So, so anyway, she reading from internet sources. She was very much wrote as far as um, she was called a labor journalist in her youth, but she was actually it was Marxism and communism that she was promoting. Um, so I think one of her quotes was she said against this leftist that was writing about her favorably, she said, quote, some historian recently wrote some attack on me in which he claimed that I was only pretending to be a suburban housewife, that I was supposed to be an agent. So he she had she was a very, very definitely uh, far left, pro-communist, pro-Soviet individual who was instrumental in the feminist movement in the United States. So it was um, a lot of feminists that were American communists posing as feminists, and unsuspecting young women who don't have any understanding of the past except coming from leftist professors would be confused about that and deceived. So, anyway, Betty Friedan, important person, had an impact on our history. I hope you'll look into her. And you may not agree. You may think she's a saint. I think she's a wonderful person, but I think that she's part of the communist. I won't call it conspiracy. There's too many moving parts for it to be one conspiracy. It's an ideology um, that has permeated our culture and is undermining the values we have: free speech, tolerance, things like that. Um, so anyway, let's go back to our timeline. Um, Now, on July 22nd, 1945, American, British, and Russian officials agreed to allow their military police to move freely throughout all the occupation zones of Berlin to thwart the city's one-way black market trade. Now, one can imagine how the Soviets would have used this policy to their advantage, not just trying to stop the black market. And I'm still searching for direct evidence. That's why I was delayed a couple days on this particular video, because I was looking, still trying to find direct evidence of what the Soviet police actually did that was above and beyond policing, though. And when I find, if I find something that's obvious, um, and I'll share it. A black market is an illegal underground economy that doesn't follow the rules of society or the law. Now, the thing about the black market in Berlin after the war, West Berlin in particular, the American decision in 1944 to give the Russians, they gave the Russians the plates for the Allied occupation marks. That's the German money. That was the main factor behind the explosion of black market activities in Berlin. The Soviets printed untold amounts of occupation currency and used it to pay their troops in Germany. Those soldiers that had not been paid for years, they were told they had to spend it in Germany because the money was not allowed to be taken back to the Soviet Union. They then embarked upon a spending spree in 1945, and that fueled the black market in Berlin. They particularly love watches, I read. Now, the reason for that, those marks, Harry Dexter White, who was the communist that I told you was Assistant Secretary of Treasury and a communist agent, he arranged the American transfer of the plates to the Soviets. So, and you can read about his activity for the Soviet Union in the John Earl Haynes and Harvey Clare's Venona, Decoding Soviet Espionage in America, 1999, and Alan Weinstein and Alexander Vasiliev's The Haunted Wood, Soviet Espionage in America, the Stalin era in 1999. So, in any event, that was Berlin was known as the espionage capital of the world. You can imagine all these people going back and forth, police and criminals and stuff. It was just a really a Wild West type of thing, or in our imagination, the Wild West. The Wild West wasn't that wild, but it was just an amazing place as far as spying goes. You would find 100 movies scripts that you could write out of that era, and a lot of interesting stuff. Some old movies that presented it, but in any event, I hope you look up Betty Friedan, maybe the black market in Berlin after the war. Look at Soviet spying in Berlin, and we'll move on from there for next time. But these are some things that I just found last few days. I thought I'd share with you, and I thank you for listening. I hope you'll do your own study and share with me stuff that you found. Thanks.